Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Sports talk where your voice counts. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now from the Sunbury Motors studio, here's Steve Jones.
Today's show brought to you by our good friends at Sunbury Motors. Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Time now for our play-by-play call of the day. Yes, if I were casting a play, I'd want Paul Keels to play the role of the voice of God.
Jackson with 10 on the shot clock, dribbling at center circle. It's down to 9. Jackson, top of the key, dribbles to the right point, throws in a lane, caught by Cato, who dunks it right at the rim. Andrew Dockage pushing it foul line, lobs it to the basket. Cato with it, lays it in right at the rim. Cato Bates Diop.
Cato Bates Diop missed most of last season with an injury. His return this year has been a big boost to an Ohio State team that does a much better job of moving the ball this year. They're a little more unselfish this year. That's in part because of him. They have a nice little rotation going for them. The one thing they don't have a natural point guard, which at some point, and when that point is in the Big Ten tournament or if it's in the NCAAs, there's going to be a point where not having a natural point guard is going to be a little bit of an issue. But right now it's not. They're playing really, really well together. And it's not like it's just the way it is. Lyles was supposed to be that point guard. But look, this is a case. Lyles isn't with them anymore. This is a case where there is addition by subtraction. Okay? He didn't help them off the court. And sometimes he didn't help them on the court either. Too selfish. There you go. That's your play-by-play call today. All right. Yesterday, we gave Sean a task. Mm-hmm. And the task was to ask Alexa, am I correct? It's Alexa, right?
Yes, for the Amazon Echo, correct.
A certain question. You may continue from there.
Okay. Yes. The big thing is, what's that unique golf club in Suit's bag known as the Chutter? So I did find a website based out of Cleveland, Ohio, thechutter.com. I'm thinking, okay, I was able to Google it and found that pretty easily. So you'd said to me, all right, since you have an Echo, why don't you ask Alexa to see if ask her about the Chutter, see if it comes up on your Echo, whether she can tell it to you or if it pops up on the screen on your Echo Show. So I asked her 3 times, not once, not twice, 3 times, and struck out all 3 times. At first, she thought I said the word chatter. Then she thought I said the word charter. And then she pretty much the third time said, I don't know what that is. That she couldn't find any information on a chutter. So it was either charter, chatter. Now, it's very rare with my iPhone. I very rarely use the Siri on my iPhone. So then I tried that, and then Siri thought I also said the word charter.
Hold on. Okay, hold on a second here. Siri? All right. Siri wants it. Siri, what is a chutter? No, comes up as charter.
Yeah, did on mine too.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
I found this on the web for wasn't what is a charter.
No, that doesn't work. All right, so we'll try it again. That may be beyond my capabilities. Okay. Let's one more time. We'll get in there. We'll try Siri one more time. Joanne Ham's running joke is I'm Siri. All right. No, I'm not. I can't do this. Siri, what is a chutter? That is beyond my capabilities. But there is an actual website. There's an actual website What's it called now?
The actual website is called thechutter.com.
Right.
And it's a company. Yeah.
It's the odd thing is, like I said, I played golf with other people, and just for the heck of it, I said, "Hey guys," I mean, not kidding around or anything like that. Where I said, "You guys ever hear of chutter?" Because until I played golf with him, I'd never heard of it. Right. So I thought, well, maybe I just didn't know about it. Okay. So, okay. They all looked at me like I was from Mars. They said, "You sure this isn't something Alan Shepard used on the moon?" I go, "No, I don't think so."
I was shocked when I was shocked that website popped right up yesterday, and then I scrolled all the way down at the bottom, and it had copyright 2013. I'm assuming the company is still in business.
Well, no, I decided to Google cults, and it came up. No. just so you know. Yeah, I thought I'd give it a shot. Siri, what is a cult? The fourth one came up. Remember, people use a chutter.
A group of people on the planet worship a chutter.
They root for their playing partners to be short of the green on par threes. Yeah, great. Look, I've got a club for this. I'm like, yeah, so do I. All right, let's get serious now. Cindy in Shamoka Dam. Hi, Cindy. How are you today?
Hi, I'm great, thanks, and I hope you are as well. Listen, I'm confused.
First of all, it's nice to hear from you again.
Oh, thanks. It's always interesting to listen to your show. And I'm not sure I approve of you harassing the person you characterize as the suit being his fan club ex-president, but what can I say?
We love him. That's the
okay.
And he'll be the first to tell you that it's all in good fun. We're good friends.
I hope so. I've been tempted to call in and rip you one. But anyway.
No, that's okay. That's okay. We'd be tempted to cut you off. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, no guts, no glory, Steve. However, I'm not calling about that. I'm calling about, I'm confused, very confused. See, I remember not too long ago that the university that I graduated from and love and care about and members of my extended family were persecuted over something they were only tangentially related to. And today, in a far worse crime by fourfold in terms of victims, not so much. I mean, why isn't Michigan State losing all of its standing in the sports community? Why hasn't their president been fired? Why hasn't the Big Ten kicked them out or fined them? The backlash against Penn State was overwhelming, like a tsunami, and not so much against Michigan State. I don't understand. Aren't they in the Big Ten?
All right, let me address that because, first of all, everything you said about Penn State's correct. No ifs, ands, or buts. So let me ask you, Cindy, should Penn State have been hit with any of that, in your opinion, in terms of, what you talked about? Should they have been hit with any of it?
No.
Right. Okay.
However, the person who committed those crimes was not an employee of the university at the time he committed those crimes. No one has shown me evidence that he committed a crime while employed by the university. In sharp contrast, this physician was an employee of Michigan State when he was committing these crimes.
Oh, no, I understand exactly what you're saying. But I felt strongly back then the NCAA had no business getting into it then. And if I feel that way, don't I have to be consistent saying they shouldn't be involved in it now?
I hear you. However, don't they have to be consistent that if they're going to try to wipe Penn State off the face of the earth, shouldn't they also do that to Michigan State? I mean, why is Penn State going to be the only What?
I understand your anger. I do understand your anger completely, but I want to be consistent in terms of how I feel about it. And I thought they were absolutely wrong with how they handled Penn State. And if I thought they were absolutely wrong about how they handled Penn State, then I don't feel I should be saying, "Hey, crush Michigan State now." I mean, it's
where
illegal.
are the rest
It's a legal
of your
matter.
press compadres who wanted to crush Penn State, and now I don't hear the same. I don't hear the same outrage.
Oh,
Steve.
do you want to know why? Do you want to know why?
I'll tell you why. It's because
it's not
women
it's not
who
football.
were raped.
It's right.
It's
And
women. It's 124 girls who were raped. That's why it's not an outrage.
And because it's not a football thing, it's not a basketball thing. And to be honest with you, if it was not for, this is my opinion here, if it wasn't for the big names, Allie Raisman, Simone Biles, Gabby Douglas, especially Allie Raisman, if it wasn't for the big names, I'm not so sure it would have had as much publicity as it's getting, because they were gutsy enough and brave enough to put their names and reputations on the line and let everybody know. That's how it got into the mainstream of the media, because suddenly out of nowhere, quote, famous people were doing it. And just, and it's just as heinous for names that you did not know about as it is for names you do know about. At least they came forward and gave voice to the other 147.
Oh, I agree. I agree completely. I just see a huge difference in how the press and the university and the organizations that govern this whole thing are responding. Mm-hmm. A huge
no doubt.
difference. Huge.
Oh, no doubt.
I mean, night and day.
No doubt. No doubt.
Night and day difference in response.
There's no doubt about that. It's interesting, though, that as time went, do you realize that when it came to sanctions, Penn State is the only school ever to have sanctions rescinded, because even they started to realize that they were wrong.
I get you. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But this man was an active employee.
And Cindy, you're not. Cindy, you're not saying anything at all that is not on the target. Your emotion is in exactly the right place. I mean, everything you're saying, there's nothing not factual about it. You're saying everything that is factual. There's no question about that.
It's just very frustrating to me. And I hear what you're saying, that some of these groups perhaps learned something from their disproportionate or inappropriate response to what happened at Penn State. I can hear that. But that doesn't excuse the press, who incessantly burned Penn State on a cross for months. Yeah. And now, was it on the nightly news? Yes, it was. And did they play one girl eating this man alive? Yes, they did. And he certainly deserved it. Don't misunderstand me for a
absolutely.
second.
Yep. And outside the lines from ESPN, let's give credit where credit is due. They've done a series of reports on this. But again, outside the lines is an interesting one because it's on in the middle of the afternoon. It's not in prime time. I know that, but that is part of their job. And outside the lines on ESPN has gone hard after this. And they've also I watched a little bit of their segment yesterday, Cindy. And again, you can't be responsible for watching everything that's on. It just turned out I caught it by happenstance. And they had Jay Billis on. And Jay Billis was talking about the NCAA, and he talked about the hypocrisy of the NCAA and how wrong they were to go after Penn State. So they're not doing anything to go after Michigan State, but they're going hard after basketball sanctions when there's been only allegations and no proof yet. So it's like he was talking about how they are a disjointed group that doesn't have any bearing, overstepped on Penn State dramatically, stayed silent on Michigan State, as you pointed out. But the moneymaker is basketball, so they want to put together a committee to make sure that basketball isn't cheating.
How is it? You know, here's what I would have expected out of the whole thing, if I may say this.
Please.
Based on what happened, these organizations, the Big Ten, NCAA, whomever else, should have all said, OMG, this did not go right. But let's assume this could happen again. And let's have a plan that we can all back on exactly what we're going to do about it and what sanctions are appropriate and who should be held accountable and in what way. And if their answer to what they did to Penn State was, let's be silent, if that became their plan, that's out. That's unacceptable as well.
Right. First of all, okay, I will say this. I'm not going to get too much into the Nassar thing because I'm not sure what percentage, because I would be speaking out of turn, and I don't want to do that. I don't know what percentage happened on campus as the Michigan State doctor and what percentage happened with the U.S. Olympic team.
Right.
Okay, so I want to be fair there, but you know there's both.
Yes,
right?
I do.
So there's both. What the percentages are and what happened on campus, what was reported when, I don't know enough about it. Okay. But the NCAA did put out a guideline for coaches after the Penn State incident. And the irony is that under those guidelines, Joe Paterno followed it to an absolute T.
Of course he did.
And that,
because
I mean,
he did,
under their revised guidelines, the man who followed the law and followed their guideline, their current guideline, you're like, well, wait a minute, check mark, check mark, check mark, check mark.
And the university policy about reporting these kinds of things.
Exactly. And so the fact that it's a big name, the fact that it's somebody who had lived a great life and had been honest or tried to be honest in almost everything he ever did, people had a field day over that. Who's Larry Nassar? Right? And again, that's not the attractive part. That's not the part that draws ratings, and you and I both know that. And how it's covered, like I said, Outside the Lines has done a good job. There's been more and more recently because of, again, the gutsy statements by the big name. I mean, Allie Raisman put herself out there, a gold medalist. I mean, the guts it took for her to do that. And because of her guts, it opened the door for a floodgate of people to finally see how deep and incredible this abuse is. Now, we all know that some of the statements that have been made by the Michigan State hierarchy, namely the president, about the Penn State situation. And it's interesting how, to this point, she has survived this when some claim, and I don't know if it's true or not, that she had knowledge or had been reported to it about it at some stage.
Well, we did the right thing. We, the Penn State alums, myself included, we fired the board members whom we could hold accountable for this. And they did the right thing in showing our president, I won't even say his name, the door about how he handled this, because he was negligent in regards to his responsibilities, as far as I'm concerned. But I still feel like there has been that the response here is incredibly different for the very same thing in terms of child sexual abuse. What's different? The gender of the victims is different. I asked myself, if this man had assaulted boys, what would the response be? I mean, this is 4 times as many people as Sandusky stands convicted of molesting, give or take change. You would think that people would be pretty angry, as I am, but I guess not.
Well, actually, no, there are people that are angry. There are people that are angry. And when it comes to the NCAA, what they did with Penn State was, in my opinion, wrong. Staying out of it and letting the legal authorities handle Michigan State, but then Michigan State's got to clean up what they're doing too. The Big Ten staying out of it. I think the Big Ten should have stayed out of Penn State. Okay, they're staying out of this. But the inconsistency of the NCAA is, okay, they go after Penn State, then they reel back on sanctions, which they'd never done before because they realized they were wrong. But then they goes to the North Carolina case, and they come up with some answer on North Carolina on academic integrity, which is what they should be investigating.
Yes.
All right? And they come up with a head-scratcher where if you ask yourself if it was UNLV and not North Carolina, would they have come to the same conclusion?
Is that where the professor was writing the people's papers for them?
That was the phony class where you didn't have to attend it, or the papers was Minnesota.
Oh, my.
That was in the 90s. That was 1998.
I see.
Jan Gangelhoff. The North Carolina one was the African American Studies program, where, for example, one of the classes had 19 students in it, and they were all basketball and football players and one former football player in it, and they all got, I believe, A's for a no-show class and no papers needed to do it. And, again, the defending national champion in college basketball was found to be since everybody in the school could take the class. It was a bizarre ruling. Jerry Tarkanian, that great philosopher, once said, the NCAA is so mad at Kentucky basketball, they put Wichita State on probation. So, I mean, that's,
Well.
So there's their level of inconsistency, and Mark Emmert's outrage at the NCAA convention about the FBI investigation dealing with basketball, and we put a committee together and things like that. Nobody's been found guilty of anything yet. Doesn't mean they aren't.
Right.
But nobody's been found guilty yet. So let's just hold the outrage until we find out who's guilty and who's not.
Well, this physician is guilty. I mean,
no, that's a different thing.
He's 60 years. He's getting off easy with 60 years.
Right. He's deservedly gone forever. What he did is, it's heinous, disgusting, and thank goodness that several young women showed the guts, the fortitude, the backbone, and had support to come forward and say, he did this to us.
Well, and isn't it interesting? How many years now is this? 3 years or 4 years since what happened at Penn State came out? Why should it have been at all courageous? Because shouldn't we have all learned this happens, and shouldn't the door have easily opened to hearing them out? I mean, that says...
Cindy, put yourself into their shoes. You're a young woman. Do you want to come forward? Oh, yeah.
Right. No, I'm not saying they weren't courageous. I'm saying shame on society. I mean, the blogosphere, or whatever you want to call it, ate Penn State's lunch for years over this whole thing. And we'll continue to, by the way. Anybody who dared to whisper Penn State, or, wear Penn State clothing, it was just absurd. It was absurd. And yet, what has society learned? That these young women felt so threatened to come out and tell the truth? I guess nothing. We've learned nothing. They should have felt assured that they would be heard after the vehemence that Penn State experienced. But instead, they felt the same fear. I mean, it's just amazing to me.
It is very difficult to go up against organizations.
Yes, I agree.
Let's take gymnastics, for example. Well, there's the coaches and there's the federation, and there's just all these levels of bureaucracy that these young women feel are all above them, that make decisions on whether they're on the team or not, and so forth. Yes. And so you're always, quote, under the thumb of somebody in the level of organization, to the point where even though you're the performer out there, you still feel like you're being controlled by somebody else, and they have control as to whether you have the opportunity even to perform.
Well, that's true, too. Well, thank you for hearing me out.
Oh, it's my pleasure hearing you out. Thank you, Cindy.
Have a good one.
You have a good one, too. We'll be kind to the suit, by the way. We'll be kind to the suit. But again, you can't cheer for us missing the green on a hole so you can use some faux golf club. You just can't do it. All right, we'll come back. Bottom of the hour, time for a news update here on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Today's show brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Taking your calls at 800-795-9565. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 and Hummel's Wharf. I don't think we've talked at all about what happened at Michigan State with Larry Nassar. I think Cindy covered it rather well. Obviously, a lot of people looked at the Penn State thing. Well, after going through the Penn State thing, obviously, I felt they were wrong in how they handled that. I'm talking about the NCAA. Well, I'm not big into two wrongs making a right, so... And neither is she, I could tell. I mean, but she's just outraged by the coverage of it. Again, does this really become a big story? Because it's a huge story, because what he did was incredibly heinous. All right. But does it become a really big story unless, again, the media is attracted to big names? They need a hook, right? Well, it turned out this became a really big story when big names started making the accusations.
Yeah, when Allie
Raisman.
Yeah, when she appeared on 60 Minutes a while back, that opened the floodgates, and then all of a sudden, Simone Biles then finally stepped up last week. She finally thought it was time for her to make her voice heard as to what was going on as well. I think what was the one thing that frustrated me last week was Larry Nassar was quoted that having to listen to the stories of all the women that was starting to make him feel uncomfortable. I thought that was absolutely pathetic on his part. I mean, the mitigated gall to say that is just he's an absolute disgrace. And Cindy did bring up a point, the point, too, about Michigan State. I think a lot of people were surprised that the president of Michigan State and other representatives of the university were not there last week to be, part of. I think they only expected a certain number of women to make their comments to public. And I guess the number has grown to now about 160, and it's now spread out over several days. And I think a lot of people were surprised that some of the higher-ups at Michigan State were not there to be part of that, to lend their support to all of those women. Now to the well over 100-plus women that are coming forward, to show their support for them.
It's, again, the media is attracted to big names. I'm talking about the national media now. The national media they need, because news and sports news has turned into TV shows and ratings, which in turn means money. It's no longer about just news. It's what name can you hook into a story that will then attract the casual viewer to take a look at it. The Larry Nassar story, right? Disgraceful, awful, terrible, heinous, disgusting. I mean, disgusting. Right? Became a national story when suddenly big names had the guts to step up, like Allie Raisman, and say, "Excuse me," and everybody perk their heads up and go, "Whoa, wait a minute, what?" Wasn't such a big deal when some of these other names came out, but all of a sudden, boom, a big name came out, and all of a sudden, boom, there was the hook. And at least it got some people interested in it. That's just the way it is. The national media, and this will be a gross generalization because this isn't going to be true of everybody, but they're a very easy group to distract. Look over here. Here's the hand. Look over here. Here's the hand. I've seen it a lot of times on a lot of different stories and not just sports stories. For example, Now let's take a completely different tact. But again, names. Okay? Hey, look at today's ESPN top headlines. Tyronn Lue. Fiery Cavs meeting better lead to wins. Okay. LeBron to self. Congrats on 30,000 points before 30,000 points. And then there's a big story here on LeBron, his path to 30,000 points. Okay. Why is that a story?
And then he's on social media thanking himself, and he hasn't even hit 30,000 points yet.
Right. I mean, but I'm saying, though, why is it a story? That's not a story. Who cares? I don't care. It's not a story. But again, what's the hook? The name is the hook. That's my point. The name is the hook. All right? Larry Nassar is not a name anybody had heard of until recently. Not enough of a hook. All right? And I'm just talking about the story coverage here. All right? Some of the names that he's been accused of with this initially were not enough of a hook. And then all of a sudden, boom, Allie Raisman stepped up. And then you heard Simone Biles. And then you heard Gabby Douglas. Now, I was like, wait a minute here. Okay? If they don't step up, does it become the national story? Oh, it's a huge story. But does it then come up? And, and then you start finding out that there's a distinct possibility that the Michigan State on their own campus knew about it. I mean, there's things in layers to it. And then we talk about the NCAA and, the NCAA's got problems. I mean, we all know that. But
I actually gave a low number a few minutes ago. There's actually up to 190. 190 victims have now stepped up to go onto the microphone to say what they had to physically endure with this guy. 190.
Right. Exactly. And well, it's he's a predator. No doubt about that. An absolute predator. Now, I mean, he's...
And a few other dominoes that have fallen over the last day or two. The Caroli Ranch, which I believe is in Texas, they're no longer going to be connected with USA Gymnastics with training, and was it like 2 or 3 members that run USA Gymnastics are no longer part of it?
Well, Rachel Denhollander reported Nassar abused her as a youth, okay? And her quote was, you don't get someone like Larry Nassar, you don't get a pedophile who was able to abuse without there being a culture surrounding him in that place. Okay? This is a long list here. Long list. And it's more than just USA Gymnastics. It's obviously what's going on at Michigan State. It's the same thing. But Allie Raisman, Michaela Maroney, Gabby Douglas have alleged that they too were assaulted by Nassar under the guise of quote medical treatment. So, but again, there's just there's layers to this. It is so hard to fight any organization. It is really hard to fight an organization. I mean, I know it's a movie, but it's a movie about a true story. But if you ever get a chance, it's an Academy Award-winning performance by Julia Roberts and Aaron Brockovich. I mean, now, that's a case of cancer-causing agents in water, right? And how hard she had to fight in conjunction with the lead attorney there against a powerful organization. How hard is it to fight the state on anything? Layers and layers. How hard is it to fight the government on anything? How hard is it to fight a company on anything? How hard is it to fight? I mean, it takes a long time, and you have to have just an incredible backbone and fortitude and a real fire inside of you to fight organizations, whether it happens to be a company, an organization, a government, whatever. It takes a lot to do that because they've got layers of protection and all over the place that make it seem like and that they'll attempt to police and they'll dismiss you and well, somehow they got this guy. Somehow they got this guy. And you're like, you mentioned 190. Well, it's 190 have come forward, right? 190 have come forward. That doesn't mean it's everybody, is it? It's not just 190. It's got to be more than that because there are probably some that just forget it. I'm not going to, because of what he did is so scarring. It's emotionally scarring. There's some that have not come forward because it's just too much for them to do so.
Yeah, each of the individual is different. You figure one could be like, I just don't want to deal with it, or I'm just not comfortable talking about it. I'm not ready to come forward, and others maybe have been brave enough where they don't want the spotlight shining on them. They just want to move on with their lives and keep their privacy. So it could be a whole bunch of different scenarios. But it's amazing. There's only one trustee at Michigan State University that said that Luana Simon should step down as president, and there's quite a few that are saying that this will not tarnish her legacy. That's pretty bold there.
I have no comment on that. Yeah. We'll come back with more in a moment on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Sometimes the truth hurts. The first 2 weeks of January with sub-zero temperatures put a hurtin' on Sunbury Motors sales. Well, bundle up and save while SMC delivers the biggest discounts imaginable. Sunbury Motors Ford wants to see you in a brand new Escape or F-150. Save up to $8,000 on new Escapes starting at $20,825. Or take up to $14,500 off a new Ford F-150 starting at $25,969. Sunbury Motors Kia doesn't want you to pay a dime in interest for your new Kia. Finance a new Sorento, Sportage, Optima, or Forte for 0% for 75 months. No one has 0% for 75 months but Kia. Sunbury Motors Hyundai wants you with America's best warranty. 10 years, 100,000 miles. Plus, you can save up to $3,807 on a new Santa Fe and $3,112 on a new Hyundai Tucson. Bundle up and save at Sunbury Motors Ford, Kia, or Hyundai in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury, and routes 11 and 15, Hummel's Wharf.
All right, great to have you with us. The more you read about this, and that's all I've been able to do is read about it. And part of this, too, is that this is also happening at a time where, for example, I got to go to Ohio State this week. You're traveling all over the place, and you see some on TV, you read a little bit about it, but you're picking up bits and pieces here and there. But, for example, at Michigan State, there are several athletes that have come forward. They're not all gymnasts, by the way. Remember, he's a Michigan State team doctor. Tiffany Thomas Lopez, a softball player, full scholarship, complained about Nassar to 3 athletic trainers in 1998. Now, this is a year after 2 gymnasts had complained about alleged abuse. And Tiffany Thomas Lopez reported it. And her quote is, "I felt like they thought I was a liar." She then eventually met with Destiny Teachner Hawk, an athletic training supervisor, and, quote, "she brushed me off and made it seem like I was crazy. She made me feel like I was crazy. Now, Teachna Hawk is still employed by Michigan State. She did not comment on this. A Michigan State spokesman said she could not comment due to pending litigation. See, again, how tough is it when you go up against an organization? Can't comment, can't do this, can't do that, blah, 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 blah. I mean, every time you turn around, there's a wall, a wall, a wall. And that's, that's a problem today. And that's what happened is that when the big names came forward, we mentioned Allie Raisman, Michaela Maroney, and so forth, and Gabby Douglas, when they came forward, they gave voice to the voiceless. Suddenly, the power of their name finally gave the power to overpower the organizations surrounding it, USA Gymnastics and Michigan State. It's very difficult to overpower organizations. But when you're a two-time gold medalist, you have more power than you realize, and finally people started to really listen. Tiffany Thomas Lopez, softball player, wow, if she complains, does anybody in the landscape know about it? No. The abuse is just as awful to her as it is to Allie Raisman. But Allie Raisman, she puts it out there and gets it out there. Now, suddenly, Tiffany Thomas Lopez has a voice. Oh. I'm a firm believer that there are exponentially more great people than awful people. But I'll tell you, the awful people out there are really awful.
Your station for news, weather, business, and CBS Sports Radio. News Radio 1070 WKOK Sunbury and on WKOK.com.